Hi, it's me, Kelly here, and in today's video I'm going to talk about how to use a language tutor. So this will apply to all languages, and then in the last half of the video I'm going to talk specifically about my 4 Afrikaans tutors who actually don't just tutor Afrikaans, so do stay tuned for the whole video even if you're not learning Afrikaans, because there might be a language there at the end that you're learning or that you want to learn. So the first thing is, when people hear that I have 4 Afrikaans tutors, they're always very surprised, because people who know me say, but I thought you like to learn languages on your own. And yes, I like to do the bulk of the learning the actual language by myself. And I don't use a tutor to follow a course or to work through a book. But what I do use a tutor for, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, is I use a tutor as a resource to check up things from my own study, things that I'm struggling with. So as I mentioned before, I use a method based upon Luca Lampariello's bidirectional translation. So I'll take my translations to my tutors and I'll have them check those up. I also like to write my own dialogues, stories, and write about sort of my hopes and dreams and things that have happened in the past. And so I'll take those to my tutors and get them to check those up as well. And another thing I use my tutors for is conversation practice. Most of us that are learning a language, we dream of being able to speak the language, and you're going to have a real hard time being able to speak a language if you don't practice speaking it. Now, there are some schools of thought that say if you have enough input, if you do enough reading and enough listening, when it comes to speaking, you'll just naturally or magically be able to do that. And although I'm a very auditory learner, so I can definitely see the merits of doing that, I still feel that you need to practice conversation, even if it's just speaking to yourself, because it's one thing to recognize sounds, but it's quite a different thing to actually make them. Although it was a very famous polyglot that said this, and it obviously works for him. So maybe it comes down to what I always say, which is everybody's different, we all learn in different ways, and obviously my opinion is very much influenced by how I learn and what's worked for me. But yeah, I do use my tutors a lot for conversation practice. So let's get to the point of why I have 4 tutors. Now, there's no magic number of the amount of tutors that you should have. I didn't strive to have 4, it just happened. So you could have more or less. But I like to speak to a variety of people. I'm an extrovert, I like people, and I also think it's good to speak to different people because we all have different accents and we all have our own preferred words and preferred ways of saying things. So I think it's really good for you as a language learner to hear different people, because it's very easy to get trained to hear in one voice and understand in one voice. So I think that you do need to talk to at least 2 people. But yeah, as many people as you can, I think is really good. I spoke a lot about this on my video, Finding People to Talk to, I think it's called. I'll put a link to it down below in the description. But when you look for somebody to speak to, it should be somebody who you feel comfortable with and who you're happy to make mistakes in front of. Because you're gonna make mistakes and you're gonna make lots of them, and it's horrible. Nobody likes to make mistakes, nobody likes to be in the wrong, but if you want to speak a language fluently, then you're just gonna have to accept the fact that you are going to make mistakes. But the good news is actually, well, personally, and a lot of other people have said the same, we've learnt a lot more from our mistakes than we have from what we've got right. And trust me, if you embarrass yourself with a word or a phrase, you'll only do it once. Well, you might do it twice, but certainly no more than that. So yeah, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes are good. And yeah, it's very difficult to learn anything without actually making mistakes along the way. So celebrate those mistakes, don't feel bad about them. It should be somebody that you are genuinely interested in. So a good indicator of this is if you both spoke the same language, would you still want to speak to that person? And if the answer is yes, then you found a keeper. A lot of people think that you need to seek out tutors or people to speak to who are native speakers. And actually, I used to think this myself until I started to teach English as a foreign language. And I realised that actually it's very difficult to teach your native language because you didn't really learn it, you acquired it. And I always say to people, I would have a much easier time teaching Afrikaans and explaining Afrikaans grammar than I do explaining English grammar, because I've had to learn the Afrikaans grammar. I didn't learn the English grammar. That's not to say that native speakers can't be fantastic teachers. They definitely are. All my Afrikaans tutors are native speakers. But what I want to highlight is don't be put off by going to speak to somebody or have somebody as a tutor if they're not a native speaker. And I'm learning Spanish with the help of an Englishman who speaks fluent Spanish, and so far I think he's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, don't be put off. Native speaker or non-native speaker can both be absolutely fantastic for speaking practice and as language tutors. So to summarise on how to find a language tutor. So you want to find someone who's easy to talk to, who you feel comfortable making mistakes in front of. And when you finish your lessons with that person, you should feel motivated and happy. Despite having made mistakes, you shouldn't feel down about those mistakes. You should feel on a high at the end of your lesson. 2, use a tutor as a resource to check up on things from your own study. Trust me, we don't mind this at all. And actually, it makes the lessons far more interesting, and it actually makes our jobs much easier. Because if you're coming to us with questions rather than us having to find things to question you on and test you all the time, it makes our job so much easier. So we love you for it. And people who are independent learners are actually, you're incredibly motivated students. We love teaching people like that. And actually I insist on all my clients being independent learners. Use your tutors for conversation practice. What I like to do is in an hour lesson, I like to break it in half. So I'll spend the first 30 minutes asking my tutors questions on things that I've found in my own study, so any problems I've had or questions that have come up. And then I use the second 30 minutes, the last 30 minutes, as just conversation practice, and that works really well for me. The next one is don't be afraid to lead the lesson. So don't be afraid to tell your tutor exactly what you want to work on in that lesson and the outcome that you're looking for. You know, your tutors want you to get the most out of your lesson with them that you possibly can. And if you've got a clear aim and a clear goal for the lesson and you're both on the same page, you will achieve that, and you're going to be happier and you're going to progress much faster. And it ensures you get the best result for your use of time and your use of money as well. Who are my Afrikaans tutors? So the first one, who I've mentioned before, is Yolande. Yolande's passion is music, and she's really good at teaching Afrikaans pronunciation through music and also through stories and poems and imaginative ideas. I once spent one lesson on Skype watching her cook her dinner, and so she was going through all the ingredients with me and the process, so that was really fun. So if you're looking for language lessons that are a little bit out of the box and a little bit creative, then definitely check out Yolande. I'll put her links in the description. She also teaches English as well, so she can teach you English or she can teach you Afrikaans. Eugene is another one of my tutors who I've mentioned before, and Eugene currently lives in Mozambique, so sometimes the connection can be a little bit funny, but of late it's actually been really quite good. He's really good at working on pronunciation through reading, and he's really good at finding out the sorts of things that you're interested in, and he picks materials that he knows you're going to enjoy. So We've worked on a couple of Nelson Mandela's speeches, we've worked on some poems, and some really interesting articles about the history of Afrikaans. And also Eugene has a wealth of life experiences, and he's just such a really interesting person to talk to, and a really, really kind and understanding tutor. So I'll put Eugene's details also down below in the description. My go-to for grammar is always Suzanne. She teaches it in the most fantastic way. Before Suzanne, I never would have believed that grammar could actually be fun, but she does it in a way that you don't actually even realise that you're learning it. So she gives you pictures and sort of storyboards of pictures, and you have to make up a story around those. And then she's done things like given me odd words, and I've had to make up sentences with those words or paragraphs with those words. And also we've done where we've had a story in English and I've had to translate it into Afrikaans, or a story in Afrikaans and I've had to translate it into English. Sometimes they've been stories which I've known, like fairy tales. We've done The Gingerbread Man, or they've been well-known books. We've done some passages from Black Beauty, and other times it will be things that are purely or very much known in Afrikaans, like Jakkels and Wolf, those types of series. But yeah, it's always fun with Suzanne, and she sneaks that grammar learning in, so it's good. And she's really good. If I go to her and I've got a question, a grammatical question, she'll always answer it and explain it without all the fluff and the long, boring, grammatical terminology. So she's really, really great for grammar. I also really enjoy speaking with Suzanne. She's great for conversation practice because she gets you talking about the things that you won't necessarily, very rarely, have spoken about in language learning books. So we've had a lot of conversations where she's asked me questions on my opinion of body image and how I think it's impacted by the media or influenced by the media. She's asked me, my opinion on religion. We've spoken about dieting pills and, do I think they're dangerous? Do I think they're good? That type of thing. And yeah, sort of conspiracy theories we've had conversations around as well. So it's always fun. Like, she really pushes you out of your comfort zone with your conversation. So yeah, she also teaches English, and she is fantastic, I've heard, at teaching children. So if you have any children and you want them to learn Afrikaans or English, then go see Suzanne. So I'll pop her details down below as well. My fourth Afrikaans tutor is Ed. Now, Ed I go to if I just purely want an hour to practice conversation, because we have very similar interests around learning languages. He's really passionate about language learning. He's learned many languages, and we're also both passionate about travel and photography and technology and those types of things. So yeah, so if I just want to purely concentrate on conversation, then I'll go to Ed. And I think Ed really is the one who is responsible for kickstarting my conversation, because he uses a method that's for beginners, that's based on the Pimsleur method of language learning. So it builds your vocab through sentences and through spoken repetition. Ed also teaches Japanese and occasionally Mandarin Chinese, so he can work on Afrikaans, English, Japanese, and he does occasionally do Mandarin Chinese. He is always learning languages. He's currently learning Serbian, and that's a great passion of his. So I'll pop Ed's links down below as well. So I hope everything I've mentioned has been helpful to you. As I mentioned before, I do coach people on how to learn languages. So I tailor the session specifically to you. So if you want to think of me as I always explain myself as I'm like a fitness coach for language learners. So I help people do things like fit the language learning into their everyday life, so it doesn't feel it's like this big awful task, and you don't have to spend hours sat at a desk learning a language. You can learn a language as you're going about your day without even really realizing how much you're learning. And I also help people work out what type of learner they are and find the best learning styles for them and the best resources for them and the best ways to use those resources. And I help people with their confidence and help people find native speakers to practice with, and just ensure that you reach your goals and that you reach them quickly and in a fun way for you, because so many people want to learn a language but they're just so scared because they think it's this awful, boring, difficult task, because of a lot of the time, because of how we're taught at school, we think it has to be sitting at the desk, writing, grammar, but it doesn't at all. We're all so different. So if you're interested in fun ways to learn languages and want to fit it into your life so it feels more natural, come and see me. You can either contact me, you can email me at kelly@fruitfulfunfluent.com, or you can go and visit www.fruitfulfunfluent.com, and I'll pop those links down below in the description, along with my tutors links and anything else I can think of that I've mentioned that'll be helpful to you. So that's everything for now. I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.